afternoon, members of the media. Good afternoon, fellow citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. I trust that we would confine today's proceedings to the particular matter of concern which has been exercising many public minds in the last few days. Let me begin by saying that I issued a statement by way of my office a couple of nights ago indicating that today I would respond to the development with respect to the intention of the Chief Justice to withdraw from his duties for a protracted period of time under the understanding that he was going on sabbatical leave. Permit me to say that I became Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago on the 9th of September by swearing to an oath of office to conduct the business of the executive and the affairs of this country assigned to the Prime Minister and the executive that she leads, to conduct that affair without fear or favor, without malice or ill will. And in so doing, I am required to observe the tenets and the perimeter of the authority that goes with that executive. It's against that background that I saw in my office on the morning of the 7th of March a piece of correspondence from the President, His Excellency the President, requesting of me as part of the consultation that is required under the Constitution, my position with respect to the appointment of a judge to fill the vacancy that existed on that day or before, arising out of the Honorable Chief Justice vacating his position to go on a period of sabbatical leave that extended for very many months. I must say that I was taken aback by this because I, as Prime Minister, know of no authority which would have created this facility. His Excellency's letter to me was accompanied by two pieces of correspondence that passed between himself and the Chief Justice. One was an application for this leave by the Chief Justice, and the other was a letter of thanks to His Excellency the President for approving this leave. It is my understanding as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago that the terms and conditions of all office holders, particularly the higher judiciary, who are paid by the Exchequer, require that such authority for payments and holding of office commensurately lies with the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago. The request for this leave began in reference to the Salaries Review Commission report This is the 98 report, which was laid in the Parliament. I was a member of Parliament when this report was laid, and as a matter of fact, I took part in the debate. The laying of that report, or any similar report from the SRC, is a requirement of law. It matters not what the cabinet thinks of the contents or the recommendations, any position advanced by the SRC. The law requires that that report be laid in the Parliament. However, the report, as is normal, carries with it specific recommendations, notwithstanding what may be contained in the deliberations leading up to those recommendations. And the 98 report is no different. It made reference in what I may call the preamble to a position advanced to the Parliament to the SRC by the judiciary for a new facility called sabbatical leave, which judges or the spokespersons who spoke to the SRC thought is something that could improve their circumstance, because the terms and conditions of the judiciary can only be improved. It cannot be decreased or diminished in any way. It can only be improved. So any change is for an improvement. That's what the law allows. So here a proposal was put to improve, by way of this change, to add this new facility, which is not without significant cost to taxpayers and also significant effect on the operations of the judiciary. And while one observes the role of the executive and not wanting to trample on the independence of the judiciary, the executive always has to keep an eye on the cost to the taxpayer of all governmental activity, even when it falls to the Parliament or the judiciary to exercise that incurring of that cost. So this sabbatical was mentioned in principle, the words of the SRC, in principle. And it was circumscribed by its length, by way of recommendation of 6 months, and to access it by persons who were there on the job for 7 years. So the recommendation in the preamble refers to this 6 months and the 7-year period to qualify. And then the document goes on to make specific recommendations of the changes that the SRC in its 98th report put to the Parliament for consideration by route of the Cabinet. And to the best of my understanding and the reading of that document and the advice that I have is that in the recommendation, there is no provision advanced by the SRC for a sabbatical as a change in the consideration for the terms and conditions of members of the higher judiciary. That being so, it is the position of the Cabinet that there is no condition which would allow the Chief Justice to go on sabbatical, for whatever reason. There's no authority for that. And therefore, had the Chief Justice proceeded, there would have been consequences of one kind or another. However, last night it was brought to my attention that a public document existed which purports to have come from the Chief Justice. I have seen no signed letter. I saw a media release, and in today's world where all kinds of things can appear, I take it that it is reasonable to assume that that document, which is a media release coming from the office, from the judiciary, is authentic, and if it is so, a new problem arises. I have this morning written to His Excellency the President, who had replied to me, expressing a contrary view to what I have just outlined, indicating that the Chief Justice has a legitimate expectation to access sabbatical leave, and surprisingly, in answer to my question as to the authority for such leave and its implications for the taxpayer and the dispensing of judicial services, His Excellency the President quoted to me his authority as the said 98 report of the Salaries Review Commission. This matter was discussed by the Cabinet this morning, and I dare say, as head of the Cabinet, notwithstanding any other opinion, I reject that position. It is my view that the President has no authority to arrogate unto himself, nor does the Chief Justice have the authority to change the terms of engagement of any member of the judiciary, particularly the Chief Justice. The authority for changing the terms of officers, that authority lies with the executive. And as head of the executive, I will guard that very zealously. I know that there are different opinions, and one can get as many opinions as there are lawyers. But until such time as the ultimate authority rules, it is the position of the government that I hold. It is my own personal position, because there are nuances where my personal position comes into play. But it is the position of this government that this development, wholly unnecessary as it is, disturbing as it is, needs to be dealt with frontally and decisively. And it's against that background that I have today instructed the Attorney General to take all legal steps to proceed to have the relevant authority, namely the courts, clarify in the face of contrary opinion whether in fact there is in existence a legitimate expectation on the part of any person in the judiciary to access sabbatical leave. And I do this against the background that the document which purports to have come from the Chief Justice last night, indicating a change of the nature of the leave, that document makes reference to the office holder reserving his option to access sabbatical leave. In furtherance and in desire of having it be made abundantly clear whether this situation exists to be accessed by him or others in the judiciary, that this matter needs to be clarified by the court. I've taken the opportunity to volunteer my advice to His Excellency this morning, and by extension to the Chief Justice, that in this new position of vacation leave, that both these officers take note of the written conditions laid down in law insofar as they govern the use and access of leave by members of the Chief Justice, members of the judiciary, including the named Chief Justice. Because you see, It is interesting that this should be a difficulty that I'm having to deal with now, as if I didn't have enough difficulties to deal with. This is one of the few instances where leave is spelled out in law, how it should apply and how it should not apply. So the government finds it difficult to understand why these confused situations are developing and demanding our attention. I have heard members of the national community, some of whom hold themselves up as leaders, leading us down a path of interpretation that the actions of the government, and namely the action of the Prime Minister in this matter, has to do with where I come from, my genealogy, and other things. I want to give the national community the assurance that the only consideration that I will have in dealing with this and any similar matter is in the context of the oath of office which I have taken. If you have any questions, I will take it at this time. Yes, Joe?
I'm just wondering, you said that you instructed the Attorney General to seek clarification from the court about expectation of sabbatical leave for the judiciary. So is it that you're satisfied?
Not expectation, existence. In the light of what is being quoted by the Chief Justice and the President and acted upon, it is imperative that that matter be clarified by the final authority, which is the court of law.
I'm just wondering, therefore, are you satisfied that this issue does not in any way cause for you to trigger under the Constitution advising the President for a tribunal to investigate the Chief Justice?
In answer to your question, I simply want to repeat that as Prime Minister, I would always undertake to be guided by the provisions of the Constitution on this matter or any other. With respect to the Chief Justice and your inference, I assume that you are referring to Section 137. I simply want to say that I am guided by the provisions of the Constitution.
But the court, this issue is a matter involving higher members of the judiciary. So they are the ones, in fact, if you are saying that you want to take the matter to court for an interpretation, they are going to be pronouncing on a matter that affects them. We are already hearing that the judiciary is divided and that people are lined up pro and against the Chief Justice or whatever on many issues. So do you think you can get a fair determination, and do you think it is right to put a himself to himself situation on a matter that is so, has become so contentious, and is that a feasible option in fact?
Well, the only other option is to find another court, which we don't have. But we do have a court of we do have a court of last resort, which is not engaged in these matters. So the court process, we are never going to be in a position where we don't have access to a court, because we do have the court. And the processes are there, structured in such a way that the issue that you raise can be dealt with.
Does the Privy Council have this remit, if it did go all the way from High Court, Appeal Court? I know there are certain matters that are excluded from Privy Council, but is this one that would be within the remit?
I'm not aware that this is excluded.
Prime Minister, are you saying that you found out that the Chief Justice was swapping his sabbatical leave for vacation along with the rest of the country through a media release?
That's why that's why I found out. I have no other communication, which is why I'm saying, I said, assuming that it is authentic, it would raise a new issue. And against that background, I've advised, or I've raised my flag with His Excellency, who approved the last vacation, the last leave, that in treating with this one, I've pointed him to the relevant sections of the law. You see, the sabbatical leave is an interpretation of what the SRC recommended and so on. That's being interpreted. But in the case of vacation leave, there's nothing to interpret. It's spelled out in law.
Chief Justice of the country.
I'm not aware of the location of the Chief Justice.
It strikes me that the current president has maybe 3 or 4 days left in office. What I hear you suggesting is the cabinet suing the presidency, which in all likelihood would be...
No, an interpretation is not suing anybody. It's an interpretation summons. You just ask the assistance of the court for a ruling.
Right. Thank you.
Because you see, this does not only apply, this matter of the claim to the sabbatical doesn't apply to an individual. It's an across-the-board change for all members of the judiciary. And it has serious consequences for the taxpayer.
So, given the fact that the current president has 3 or 4 days left in his office, would it not be open to the cabinet to allow the new president to make a new or different interpretation of the leave process?
Well, if you bear in mind that the new president doesn't come into office until Monday, and the document that says that the Chief Justice is going on leave implies that he could have gone, might have gone, or will go. I don't know. The government continues. The country is continuously in operation. There's no hiatus.
Why burden the taxpayer with the cost of going to court when the two branches should be able to sit and resolve this issue? And I think that the cabinet's decision seems premature now that there is no sabbatical leave proposal on the table, and in view of the fact that there appears to be on the part of the Chief Justice at least an awareness that if the cabinet says no is no.
Okay, let me put it this way. It has been brought to the attention of the cabinet today by the Attorney General that the advice, senior counsel advice, to the Office of the Attorney General is that a case exists for sabbatical leave to be accessed. And I should also tell you that in this particular matter, because of the peculiarity of Section 137, being an action that is required, if required, to be taken by the Prime Minister alone in his deliberate judgment, I have sought separate and independent senior counsel advice. And my advice is different to the advice that the Attorney General got.
What is that advice, Prime Minister?
Just what I said a while ago. I am following the advice that I got, that sabbatical leave is not available and does not form part of the terms and conditions of the judiciary because there has been no authority arising out of the mention of that leave in the SRC report.
Can the Chief Justice go on leave of whatever kind without the approval of the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition?
I am aware that judges can leave the jurisdiction under administrative leave granted by the Chief Justice, and that the Chief Justice can leave the jurisdiction on leave approved by His Excellency the President. As Prime Minister, I do not have to approve judges going on leave. So the system,
Approve somebody acting for the Chief
yeah,
Justice.
the Chief Justice, if the Chief Justice goes out of the country, there has to be a Chief Justice in office. And for a person to hold that office, it requires the consultation with the office that I hold. That,
For right now?
no, because I have made the case to His Excellency the President that no vacancy exists. And therefore he ought not, no authority exists for a vacancy to be filled.
So can the Chief Justice proceed on vacation leave without the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition agreeing to appoint an acting Chief Justice?
Well, that is not for me to deal with, that's for the President to deal with. I don't have to agree with that operation. I'm not involved. The Office of Prime Minister is not, the Office of Prime Minister is not involved in the creation of any vacancy to be filled, either by an administrative vacation being accessed or by an implied sabbatical being utilized. So it is only when a vacancy exists by virtue of the substantive holder leaving the country for whatever reason that the Office of Prime Minister is brought into play to determine who should sit there. If the President takes the position that it is okay and authorizes the Chief Justice to leave the country, then a vacancy exists. And in filling that vacancy, the President will have to consult to the Prime Minister. My only position in this is to draw to the attention of the President that this vacancy, which has come to my attention by virtue of this consultative process, is a vacancy created without authority.
So how does that...
If I could ask a basic thing.
Prime Minister,
Can I just ask a second? Very basic. The AG's remit is to deal with the question of sabbatical, but the report is that the CJ is going under vacation. Will the AG consider vacation? I'm a little confused on that.
The matter of the vacation leave is purely in the realm of the President to determine whether the law that stipulates terms and conditions of vacation will be observed by those accessing and granting leave. And the matter of the sabbatical, an inconclusive situation has arisen, which is why you need the interpretation of the court.
I'm a little confused because I thought the latest thing I read was that the CJ is applying to go on this vacation thing, not on sabbatical.
No,
so
yes, but you have to. But I said early on, in making that position clear, the Chief Justice points to his option of his sabbatical, meaning that that sabbatical story is still alive. He has an option of sabbatical which he is not taking today, but maybe tomorrow, and it doesn't only apply to the Chief Justice.
Thing, but the actual thing on the ground to deal with now would be the...
Nothing is theoretical.
What's Cabinet's position on the man taking the vacation for the 35 weeks?
We're not dealing with individuals, you know. We're dealing with institutions.
Well, I mean, the individual is in the question. I mean, it is about the individual. The man is applying for, I think it's 35 weeks vacation. What's the Cabinet position on that?
The Cabinet has no role in that.
Sorry?
The Cabinet has no role in it.
There appears to be a query as to whether he can accumulate.
Well, that is precisely, which is precisely what I've pointed out. I've drawn to the attention of His Excellency the President the law which applies to the terms and conditions for vacation for members of the judiciary. It is for them to conduct themselves according to the law.
And that's in the letter sent, the
Yes.
last letter.
Which I mean, and given the nature of this particular matter, I don't normally make the correspondence public, but on this occasion, for public information, because of the public interest of this particular matter, I will ask my office to make the letter available to you. because I think the public needs to know exactly what is happening, because, you know, you being confused, and the public will be confused, so to assist the public in what is happening, the response would be made available to you after.
Prime Minister, I'm just wondering, the position that you are...
Wait.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can I ask who is the senior counsel who gave the Attorney General advice suggesting that there was, I ask it because, you know, the pool of senior counsels, it's small, and sometimes people represent their cross-references.
I don't want to get involved. I mean, you can talk to the Attorney General about that, because the last place I want to be is between lawyers. Because, you know, I don't, except home, only when I'm home. No, yeah, I don't want to get into the personalities of which, who said what on this. The Attorney General might want to tell you that, but that's not for me to get involved in. I sought legal advice. I satisfied myself for the position. I accept the legal advice that's been given to me, and this matter is unfolding.
To say your own attorney? You wouldn't say the AG's SC, but would you say your own SC, or your own SC was it like in-house or external?
No, it would be external SC. External SC.
Say who, by any chance?
Well, I don't want to let that become the issue as to who did it. I had senior counsel advice, even before I had senior counsel advice. Even before I had senior counsel advice, this problem became stark and real to me. When I wrote the President on the 7th of March, I wrote him in the context of my understanding that this is not known to me, this conditional sabbatical leave. And it's a change that does not have cabinet authority.
My thing is this whole thing not like a mountain? So I'm making a, what about mountain out of a molehill? Because if the guy is going for the 35 weeks anyhow, all we're doing is just like legalism, say getting a legal ruling, and if it's go to the Privy Council. But
let me repeat this.
Let
me repeat this to you. This is not about a guy. This is about the changing of the terms of engagement of every single member of the judiciary, because it becomes an entitlement to which the Chief Justice has pointed and to which the President has affirmed. There is a serious cost to that. Not to mention the nature of authority in the country must be observed. The terms and conditions of state employees, in this case, the judiciary, members of the judiciary, the authority for those terms lie with the executive. And however else the case can be made elsewhere, the authority for it must be with the cabinet. And there's no cabinet approval for that. And therefore, if it is allowed to stand, then what else can take place without cabinet authority?
But the thing is, he's not putting it to the test. If he's not, if he's leaving the country whenever tomorrow, he's not actually testing this sabbatical thing.
But he's causing it to be tested.
I don't know.
The senior counsel, are they local people or?
Local people.
Prime Minister, can I ask, why did you seek senior counsel's advice when the Attorney General is the legal advisor to the cabinet? Why would the Prime Minister seek independent legal advice?
Yeah, because Section 137 doesn't say the cabinet. It says the Prime Minister in his individual capacity. Prime Minister there doesn't mean cabinet.
So you sought independent legal advice on 137, but so are you linking
no.
137
I sought
to this
independent advice as Prime Minister, not as cabinet, as Prime Minister, because there are instances where my own deliberate judgment away from the cabinet is what is required.
Prime Minister, I'm just wondering, I'm seeking clarification. The position as you have applied today, will that have any impact on the swearing in of the new president on Monday, given the fact that that is normally a function which involves the Chief Justice?
Well, I don't see that it could have an impact there. I mean, let me put it this way. One way or the other, there will be somebody there. Because if the President agrees with the Chief Justice that a vacancy exists, then it falls to the president to fill that vacancy with somebody else.
But as of this moment, because originally you had said in the first letter from the president, it was seeking consultation with you in the context of having someone act as Chief Justice when his sabbatical leave issue came up. Is it that this issue of an acting Chief Justice still has to be resolved? Is the president, has he yet consulted with you or dealt with that issue?
If you, which is why I'm making the letter that I've written to the public, with the president public. And if you read the last paragraph of that letter, you will understand that I said to the president, now that we have moved from sabbatical leave to vacation leave, I anticipate that you, Your Excellency, will get a request for such. And if you do get that, I anticipate that the consultation will be opened with me.
Also, the interpretation of the court concerning the issue, the clarification you're seeking, will that ruling then have any potential impact on any decision you may make with regard to Section 137?
Not that I know of. What it will do, and what is meant to do, is to ensure that there's no ambiguity with respect to the accessing of sabbatical leave by members of the judiciary.
Does the fact that the incoming president, Madam Justice Paula May Weeks, that the fact that she chaired a committee and did in fact apply for sabbatical in the past, did that create a situation where maybe the government wanted to clarify it without her having to eventually...
No, as I said, we are not handling, I am not handling this matter at the personal level. It's being handled at the institutional level. And in that sense, there's no special nuance with her coming in. It's not about her. It's not about him. This is about the institution.
Have you received any complaint formally about the Chief Justice in the context of 137?
No, I have not.
So therefore, just to follow up on your question, that is not an option for you at this stage. In other words, you still hold confidence in the Chief Justice to continue serving as Chief Justice?
When that changes, I'll let you know.
So you're saying that you hold confidence in him serving as Chief Justice?
I'll let you know when there's a change between September 9th, 2015, and any other day.
And Minister, you have, as was noted at yesterday's function, you've been in public life for 31 years. And in that period, you would have gone through perhaps Sir Ellis Clark, Mr. Hassan Ali, Mr. Robinson. Yes. Given the fact that we're coming to the end of one president's term, would you, given your 31 years in public office, care to give us an assessment of the current president's term of office?
Current president. We survived. We survived it, so I wouldn't want to be the person marking the paper on that. I don't think it is something that I would want to engage in. I'm a student of history, and I think sometimes, you need the historical perspective on these matters.
A kind of wild card question. Does this whole sabbatical issue serve the government conveniently as a red herring when we have problems of the economy, the Tobago Sea Bridge, and now the latest thing being the Sobo massacre, the crime situation? Does it conveniently serve the
I
government?
now understand why you preface your question like that. Because really, it's not really a question that I should be answering. I'm talking to you about a serious matter which impacts our constitution in a very serious way. And unless you could point out to me how it is serving the government, I would decline to answer your question. How could this possibly be serving the government? Are you implying that?
Headlines for a few days and pushing the crime off the front page.
We are not a government about grabbing headlines. This government is not about grabbing headlines. This government is about carrying out its duties in a serious and responsible way. And when you have a situation like this involving the most senior officers in the country, and by the way, there was a front page story in The Guardian with my picture on it, indicating that I was among two other office holders, the three of us on the front page, and the front page editorial was that these three office holders are falling short in their duties. I take umbrage at that. I take serious umbrage at being identified as a senior government officer with the President and the Chief Justice falling down in my duties, when in fact, I did the opposite. I was very careful all along to ensure that the office of Prime Minister and the executive of this country stayed away from what was going on elsewhere, because there was a requirement for the executive to ensure that the country had an executive that was acting responsibly. So when other persons get themselves in this situation, I take umbrage at being lumped with it. And this is not a laughing matter. This is not a joking matter. This is the country's constitution. And you don't skylark with your constitution, because small matters can explode into serious consequences. And the government is not taking this very lightly.
The situation, Prime Minister, as a constitutional crisis?
No. But if it is not properly handled by those who are duty-bound to access office and carry out office in a particular way, then it can get out of control, which is why we say that, one, the cabinet objects, I as Prime Minister object to the President granting sabbatical leave without the authority of the cabinet. We've taken that position. And two, if the Chief Justice is going to go on extended vacation leave, we draw to the attention of other office holders that there are laws governing these developments. And if there are those who can see wrongdoing on our part, well then so be it.
Reference was made, if I'm not mistaken, by both the President and the Chief Justice to the Hansard of 2014, the very debate, and the statement made by a then cabinet member that there was approval. Have you, since in office, has there been the discovery of any note or anything indicating that approval had taken place?
Hansard does not give approval. Hansard is a debate, and there are 41 members of parliament, and it's interesting that you can point to one person. What about the other 40? What did the Hansard of the other 40 say? And Hansard opinions are no substitute for cabinet authority.
What are your thoughts on the Chief Justice attempting to grant himself sabbatical leave, and then, on the other hand, now trying to say, well, I have 35 weeks vacation and I'm going to take it and go on my fellowship? It seems as though he's trying to go on his fellowship by any means necessary, whether it be according to law or not.
That is a matter I think you can put to him. I'm not going to comment on that in that way. It's not some, I mean, opinions and expectations are there and open. I deal with the facts of the situation.
This country.
I don't know that he has left, and if he has left, he would have left maybe with the authority of the President. I don't know. Understand, the authority that I exercise is only one part of the country's authority. That is the authority of the executive, the cabinet. We had the Parliament, we had the judiciary, where other persons or other situations can develop. I am not going to overreach, except to point out to other individuals where the executive is drawn in, that we and I, who head the executive, stand on what we understand it to be.
Prime Minister, can you or do you ascribe motives to the President granting the Chief Justice a sabbatical in the first place?
Yes, the motive is to grant him a sabbatical. That's the only motive I can know. What are the motives? The President grants approval for leave. That's the motive. I don't know of any other motive. Anyway, thank you very much.